This conference
Okay.
will now be recorded.
So yeah, so we're kind of talking about open houses, but I don't know if everyone knows who you are. I don't know why they don't. Um, so how long have you been in real estate, and kind of give us an idea of maybe your background before real estate, so we kind of get to
Sure.
know what you're all about.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, I have actually been at Keller Williams for almost 4 years. It's where I began in real estate, and it's where I've stayed in real estate, and it's where I continue to stay and plan to stay. Before this, the bulk of my work history, which I think has positioned me to do well and be able to adapt to this business, is I worked retail. And I worked in a lot of different capacities, but the bulk of it was for the Gap, and I held many positions, and I dealt with people all the time in many different capacities. So it gave me pretty good communication skills. It gave me I'm pretty intuitive with people. So, and the organization part has helped a good bit as well. But it really has versed me to be able to deal with the chaos of real estate. For those of you that haven't worked retail, Drew can attest to it. It is an absolute, feet on the ground, chaotic. You never know what's coming all the time. And
All
I
different
really think that,
personalities.
right, all different
It's crazy.
scenarios, a tractor trailer could be supposed to be there at 3 o'clock and it could get pushed to 2 in the morning. And you always had to be what we called audible ready. You had to just be ready to attack whatever happened. So I think that has a lot to do with why I've been able to not be thrown off course the way a lot of people are, because they're not used to the all-in that real estate requires of you. I don't have a problem working long hours because I was used to that. I was used to working 7 days a week lots of times. So I definitely think it was an asset for me.
So going into you getting your first couple of years and you establishing like your main sources of lead sources, and obviously like your people, like we talk about 3 lead sources or 3 pillars. Like did you define those? What are they now? And did you start with those 3 lead sources out of the gate, or kind of how did it evolve, I guess, in your world since you
Okay.
years?
Yeah, it's definitely changed. It definitely has changed. I started out solely relying on my sphere, which, as Drew can attest to, I was very afraid of. I was afraid, just like everybody is, of tapping into them and bothering them. So, but that was where my business got started. But then because I was uncomfortable with it, I was continually looking for something else that was going to work better for me, that I would get, a greater return on my investment and not feel as uncomfortable about, because I am a relationship person, and I was so overly consumed with worrying that I was going to diminish these relationships because I was going after them for my business. So at the beginning, it was really a little bit of my sphere and all open houses. Well, now it is a lot different. I do a ton of networking. I'm in a 212 group, which some of you may have never heard, and I'm also part of Synapse. And I do a ton. Like I go out socializing, I go out, for drinks with people. I 7 meetings a week. I have networking meetings 1-to-1 with 7 people every week. And that's how I'm staying in front of people. I am not as timid about my sphere anymore, but I don't go after them as aggressively, like as a big whole. I have narrowed in the ones that I feel as though really are going to help me and want me to grow in my business. And then the third pillar is open houses. When I do an open house, I have a very set way that I go at it and everything. But really the bulk of my business now comes from referrals and my networking partners. And I can't complain. I can't complain about it at all.
And did you not put all your eggs in one basket? Why did you decide, okay, sphere, open houses, networking? Why don't you just do networking and not, to heck with the sphere and to heck with open houses? Why do you still keep 3 in your bucket?
Because I couldn't get it all from one. And also, I saw the opportunity in the others and didn't want to cut off the possibility of them. Because the other thing is networking it's a job in itself. And
Yeah.
there's many weeks where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't go to one more meeting, I can't have one more coffee. And so I always wanted to have a backup if I suddenly felt as though I couldn't do that anymore or it wasn't working, because I didn't know if it was going to work. I mean, my 212 group is almost 2 years old, and we have not grown physically as the number of people, but the amount of business that we produce. So it was one of those things where I didn't know if it was going to work. So I had to make sure I had my backup plan. And those other ones are almost not residual, but they're there. Like occasionally I'll get something from my sphere, and same thing. When I have the opportunity in open house, it works. So it's keeping those other wheels rolling and keeping them fine tuned so that you don't forget about them, and it's muscle memory when you have to kick them into play.
Good. So, how many days a week do you focus on the open house process, or walk us through, a little bit of a mini detail on how you pick your open houses, your marketing process. Can kind of walk us through that process?
Okay, so if I don't have a listing myself, what I do is on Saturdays and Sundays of the previous week, I start looking at new listings in our office. So I go in and look at the active listings. I look at the house. I look who the agent is. And if I think it's like one that fits the demographics that is good for my business, I reach out to the agent and ask if I can do the open house. That's the very first thing I do.
You don't take anything. You are selective.
I am very selective. Yes. And that's my personal preference, because I also know what works in my business. And geographically, I can't easily do a open house in Mechanicsville and feel as though I know as much about the area and I'm going to be able to dedicate the time, because I have enough business that I can't pick an open house that's an hour away. I mean, that's me personally. That's the way I've had to switch in my business. Now, 2 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. I probably would have taken it anywhere and everywhere, but as you get busier, you have to pick and choose those things. So I look at, the price point of the house. I look at, the potential for how many people are in that market. Yes, I love a first-time home buyer. I am looking for that 250 sweet spot, but I'm not afraid to take a $750,000 house at the same point. So it really is about how it fits into what's going on with me at that point. And then I start marketing it with social media. Like, that's the very first thing I do. I blast it on all the forums, and I don't have access to the tools to call people because I don't pay for any of those things. So I don't call anymore. When I first started in real estate, I absolutely did, because a lot of the newer agents don't know how much realist has changed, and we had access to all of that information. And we just opened up the tax records and we could pull up a spreadsheet, and I would call 30, 40 people in a neighborhood. Unless they're in your program or you buy into something, you don't have that access anymore. So I door knock, and if I can, get in front of people that way. But I really think the calling is a value and an asset. I just don't have the capability to do it now.
Right.
And so that's the basic of my marketing is I put a lot on social media, and I door knock the neighborhood. And if I can be in front of somebody, I hand them a flyer and a business card. Like, I try and be proactive. And the rest is about the open house. So I think I answered all those questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just, you advertised, you found it, you marketed it, now you're doing the open house. Walk us through, how do you convert open house leads, like how you greet them? One of the biggest things you always say is nobody fills out the daggone sign-in sheets. You get nobody, you were there for an hour and nobody's there, and then all of a sudden it's like the clown bus drops off and there's 65 people rolling through your open house. How do you manage and facilitate and greet? And so walk us through the day of the event and some tips and tricks about that.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I like to do if I have the capabilities to do is to meet the seller, because I want to learn anything about the house that I can, especially if it's not my listing. I will ask, if it's Best Pretty, I ask Paige for the information sheet. I want to treat it like it's my listing. So first of all, that's the first thing I always do. I want to be prepared for the open house. I get there early enough that I walk through the house and make sure that there's not like anything dirty or weird. I don't show up at 5 up. I show up a half an hour before minimum, so to feel like I have control of the house, because it is. It's very important to feel secure in there. That's one of the things. I want to know what I'm in for. Right.
Yeah.
If it's a vacant house, like, it's a little bit different, but if it's a furnished house, I want to know every door. I want to know that all the lights are on, if I've got my music and everything set up. So that helps me get in the mindset as well for the house, because I feel comfortable with it. I'm at one with it. I kind of understand the lay of the land. So then I always try and set up where they're walking in the front door and I'm the first person they see. I'm the first thing they see.
So you don't hang out in the back in the kitchen. You are actually in the front.
If they're coming into a foyer, I try and have all of my stuff set up on a table and be close to the foyer. I don't like being where they can't see me, because a lot of times people walk in and you can tell if they don't see someone, it kind of makes them uncomfortable. So
Right.
Like, I always want to be seen, and I read the people's energy right away. I'm trying to figure out, like, if and I adapt. I try and adapt to each person. Like, oh, this person wants me to talk to them. This person wants to avoid me at all costs.
Right.
So I get a feel for it. If they don't want to talk to me, I just try and give them the information sheet. I'll always have a flyer, and then I also keep a copy of the matrix sheet, because the flyer is the pretty, gives you the basic overview, but the matrix sheet shows you whether it's gas, whether, there's granite in there and everything, the real nuts and bolts. And I have found that a lot of times people would rather you give them that information so they can walk away with it than you stand there and dictate it to them.
Sure.
That's my personal
And do you
preference.
think from the body language and figuring out their vibe, because you have that retail experience, that helped you? Do you think that you pick up on that quicker, or have you adapted and learned that over the years now since you're in real estate for a few years longer? Because how do you really pick up that? How do you know when to not talk and just hand it to them? Like, how have you learned that behavior pattern?
So some of it did actually have to do with the retail, but a lot of it has done with. I heard you. Could you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I did.
We're good. Okay. But a lot of it did start with retail, because, and this is, a lot of people that have never worked retail, and I told someone this story the other day. When someone walked into my store, I would look at them and say, are they here to buy? Are they here to steal? Or are they here to just look? And that's
Great.
that. It is true. It was like, that was what my day was.
Totally.
Yeah. And occasionally, are they looking for a job? Is this person looking for a job?
Yeah.
But with real estate, you're trying to get a sense, is this one of the neighbors looky-looing, or is this somebody who, walks in and, like, maybe they have a notebook in their hand, maybe you see them looking up as they're coming in. I'm just looking at their body language, and I'm trying to make eye contact with them. And if they let me make eye contact with them, that's always a good indication. If someone is intentionally steering their body away from you, they don't want to talk to you. And that's what I look for. And if I'm wrong, I take that cue and I run with it as well. But it's really looking at, and you look at their body posture. Are their arms down around their side? Are they open to you? And this is foreign to a lot of people, but this is what you look for, their body gestures. Is their face looking at you? Are they smiling? Do they have a happiness about them? Or are they walking in with their arms crossed and their wife brought them to open houses and they have no intent on being there? So that's the other thing is, if you have a couple, you have to figure out which one is the one that you're going to talk to. And maybe one of them is the person beeline into the back of the house, and the other one's like, oh, I'll fill out your clipboard. So it really is just looking at them and trying to connect with them right away, because it is really hard once they get past you to reel them back in and make a connection. You have to do it. And that's why I am up at the front, because
I think that's so valuable. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But it really does. It's really learning to read people.
Yeah. So would you say that's your success in converting people at open houses. You mentioned the clipboard. Like, how do you get their information? You build the rapport, and then how do you do follow up so you can, really get these, people and convert them into clients? What is your like secret tip or trick about converting these leads that walk in the door?
So there's a couple things that I have there in my arsenal. So first I have the clipboards, and now I just have the clipboard with the little information sign-in sheet. And I've evolved the way I did it. I used to have everything on the clipboard. I would have the matrix sheet, I would have the flyer, and then I would have the sign-up sheet. And I found, you know what? They don't want to talk to me. I have given them everything. So now I have the sign-up sheet there. So I say, hey, I just need a record of everybody that's come through the open house. It's for my safety. It's for the owner's safety. And we also want to be able to follow up with you if you love the house or if there's any feedback we need. And I just organically, I don't have a set script because you're trying to read that person and you're trying to figure out what the best thing to say to them is based upon how you're feeling about them. And if they say, well, I don't want to fill it out now, I just simply say, well, you know what? It's really important to us if you could at least, carry this around and fill it out at the end and hand it back to me. It's just, we need a record of everybody that comes through the house. And, I don't say, or you can't see the house. I've been told that there are agents that, well, you can't come in the house if you don't fill it out. I just think that you're setting up yourself to close off the lines of communication. So yes, we prefer to have their information. If they don't want to fill it out, can I just get your name? Can you just tell me that you were here? You don't have to give me any of your contact information so I can report it back to the listing agent, sort of thing. And then I have items of contribution. So I might have some listings that are like printed out some listings in the area, because I have found for whatever reason, get a lot of people that are in from out of town. A lot of my business has come from open house, that people that are relocating. So I want to have those tools in place if they're like, we don't really know the neighborhood or we don't really know the area and this house didn't check their boxes. I'm going to come from contribution. I'm going to say, well, just to let you know, there's some other houses in the area where, I could possibly show you later today or later in the week, or this one's having an open house. Maybe you swing by and see that one. The other thing that I keep in my arsenal is Richmond Magazine puts out a magazine once a year called the Richmond Source Book. And as soon as it usually hits in March, I go and buy about 20 of them. And I have a stack of them in my open house. I have a cute little sticker of my business card branded on it. And if I get somebody that's not from the area, I say, well, here's some great reading material for you. Or if I run out, I get their contact information. And I have actually gotten 3 deals from having to mail those people that information to another state. So they're like, oh, yeah. So, and it is. It's totally an item of contribution. Everybody loves it because it talks all about Richmond. It talks about the schools. It talks about eating out. It talks about culture. And it really gives people this snippet of the community. So those are
receptive to that? Why? I mean, so they come to an open house. I think the initial thought is you need to sell them the square footage, the bedrooms, the bathrooms. You come kind of in a totally different perspective and say, here's a magazine about Richmond. Why do you think that connects with them, and how has helped you, convert leads? Like, what's the?
Well, I think a lot of it is because I'm not overly aggressive sales focused. That it's really, I'm really just trying to connect with them as a human being. And yes, as a potential client, but I am not going, what, have you been talked to a lender? Have you been pre-approved? Do you have an agent? Oh my God, can we sign this buyer's agreement? No, I'm like, hey, how are you today? It is about making that connection and making them feel comfortable with you to the point where they want to meet with you again. And yes, I promote the house.
Yeah, but it's not really about the house, right? It's about human connection. I think I don't want people to miss that. Like I see overly aggressive, and then I also see very passive, where people barely talk to the person. I think one of the things I hear you saying is that you make them feel welcome. You connect with them on a human level, and then work your way through, obviously giving value from a real estate transaction once you establish that. So,
right. Well, and I still take the opportunity at this point to say, hey, as you're walking through the house, and you taught me this, ask them what their favorite thing is about the house and come back and tell me about it. And now what I do to take it up a notch is I try and find out what the seller's favorite thing is about the house. So I'm kind of like storing the information and saying, oh, I'm sorry, my phone keeps blowing up. So if it's beeping, I apologize. So I can say, oh my gosh, that's great. That's the same thing that the seller loves about it. Or, oh, I will report that back to the seller. They will love hearing that. So it's yet another, it's almost an embedded command. I'm always looking for the opportunity. Yeah, look for an opportunity to have an embedded command. And, and that you're really listening to somebody, that you're not just seeing them as a body, that you're trying to get their information so you can call them later to show them a house.
Yeah.
So it is. It's first making the connection, and then it is promoting the house. I promote the house. I don't want anybody to be on here and be like, I'm never letting her do an open house.
Exactly. So you do that. You do the marketing. You convert the leads. What's your follow-up process look like? Because sometimes we get, great rapport at open houses and they ghost you, right? They just never call you back. They don't text you. They don't open the portal. So like, what is your follow-up process? So, do you start Sunday night? Do you start Monday, Tuesday? What's your follow-up after you finish your open house?
So I don't do on Sunday. I wait until Monday. And It's one of those things. And it depends on what form of communication I can have. Can I call them? Did they give me a phone number? Can I text them? Can I email them? It really depends on what information they've given me, but it all starts on Monday. And I just reach out to them and thank them for coming to the open house. And did they have any questions? I don't start the full court press at that first connection after the open house. I get a feel for how they feel about the energy, like, of me calling them. Or did they take my call? Did they, I jot down everything. I log what time I called them, if they call me back, if I got a text back. So I have a paper trail, in the CRM showing the communication. And
so you use your database to add all that into all the open house leads and all the notes into your database is what I heard.
Yes, and I also have an open house.
To say that. That's amazing.
No, but I also have an open house folder where I keep all of those slips. So they don't go by the wayside, because maybe I jotted down some note on the back of it. I mean, that's the other thing that a lot of people, like, you need to be taking notes. Like, they had their little girl Sally with them. She really liked, boom, boom, boom. Like, you are trying to remember any personal connection information about them. Like, they drove such and such Jeep, or they really like Manchester School, blah, 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 blah. Anything I have, so that when I start having those follow-up conversations, I have a little bit of the personal information. So the first one is Monday, and then it depends on how it goes. If I hear back from them right away, I then try and set up a meeting with them. If it's slow, I'm calling them once a week. And basically, I call until someone tells me to leave them alone. I mean, that is really my mentality on everything. Until you tell me that you're not interested, I'm going to keep reaching out to you via something. And the one thing that people don't understand is open house leads can last for 2, 3, 4 years. Like, I'm still nurturing. Yeah, it's not an instant transaction every time. And so that's why you have to have the system in place to keep staying in front of them, because I have had more than one person say to me, I'm calling you now because you kept reaching out to me. You stayed in contact with me. You didn't, after 3 months, give up on me. And that's the most important part, is having that system that you can track what you're doing so that you go, oh, God, I called them on Monday and Tuesday. No, I didn't want to do that. So you have to.
I think the average agent probably calls them once or twice. So being above average and going above and beyond is you pushing through that ceiling. So, like, was there a mindset around that? Because, like, did you always follow up with an agent or with leads from open houses, like, from day one? Did you push past any of that? Because there is a mindset about open houses and how much you follow up and what you say and safety and things. What would you say about kind of your mindset around it? And then did you always call multiple times and things like that?
Well, I know that at the beginning, I wasn't consistent at calling every single one that didn't have an agent. I let the, drunk monkey on my shoulder say, they didn't like me and I'm not going to call this one. Or this one seemed like boom, boom, boom. I now, if they filled out the information and they said they are interested in buying or selling and they don't have a realtor, I now contact them. I changed my mindset and said,
what?
because everybody is an option. I
Yeah.
think I flipped because someone reached out to me that 1,000% shocked me, and I felt like shame on me for not thinking that everybody deserved an opportunity. And that's what did it. I mean, it was really one of those things where this woman calls me and all of a sudden I'm struggling. I'm like, who is this? And she's like, I met you at, 123 Smith Street. And I'm like, and then it clicked. And I found her slip and I found all of her information and everything. And I was like, that was so stupid of me. I almost missed the opportunity because I thought that you should really analyze who is a potential and who's not. It's not for me to decide. I have to.
You didn't feel like you connected, like when you talked to her, she was pretty like flat, like she was just kind of, hey, lack of a better word, like boring. She just didn't have the energy. She
didn't, right. She just wrote down the information, walked through the house, took the flyer, and walked out the door.
So you feel like she didn't like you, you didn't like her, like we're not going to be friends, so I'm not calling her, right?
Right,
right.
And she bought a house with me. I mean, like that's the thing is like, oh, so at that point is when I had to switch gears and say, okay, you really need to be more open, and that's what a lot of it is it's so hard in this business because you are trying to judge that person when they come through the door for multiple reasons. Are they somebody that it could affect me for safety? Right. Is this a neighbor? Is this someone that the seller doesn't want in their house? There's so many different things. So I think that was the other thing is like I had to really change the mindset and look at everybody was an opportunity until they told me they weren't.
Yeah. No, that's great. So we have a lot of newer agents, obviously, in coaching that are other agents that maybe listen to this. And I always think it's important. You're obviously further down the path than some of the new agents, but we always talk about the one thing and, the things that you would learn about open houses and maybe the mistake that you made. We always fail forward. If you were to give an new agent, you flash back and say, I would have done the same thing. What's one thing that you learned about doing open houses that you think a new agent should know? And then also, what's one mistake that you did? You're like, don't do this. It'll jeopardize or kind of flatten some of the opportunity with open houses.
So the one thing that I think that I learned, I can't say that it was early on. I don't remember when it was, but as we do open houses for other people, and it's not our own listing, I made the mistake of not knowing everything I possibly could about the house. Because a lot of times people walk in and they don't understand that concept that it's not your listing. They see a person in there and they think this is their house. So when they start asking you what the countertop is, how old the refrigerator is, all those things, you look like you're there just as a body. And you discount yourself. Like you lose credibility when especially if it's information that you should know. Now, if someone asks you something crazy like, when was the last time the refrigerator was serviced? Okay, you're not going to know that. But at the same point, you also know how to respond because, you know what? I know a lot about the house, but that's a question specifically for the seller. So I knew how to respond. So the thing that I learned is learn about that house just like it's your own listing, because you could have a potential buyer that walks in there and you don't want to lose an opportunity for that agent that it's their listing either because you didn't know enough about the house.
Tips, what do you think what would be a quick way for them to learn some information about the house? Like, how do you learn about it? Like, where do you get that source?
The first thing I do is I study the matrix sheet. I look at, all the square footage, the lay of the land, the finishes, is it stainless steel appliances? I want to know what's conveying, or if it's not conveying, is there an HOA? How much is the HOA? What does it include? If there's something that it's not on that, then I reach out to the agent. I'm like, okay, can you tell me this? Can you tell me this? Because sometimes the agent doesn't know as well. And I want to know that as well. You know what? The sellers lived in this house for 7 years, and this is the roof that was on there when they bought the house, and they don't know how old it is. I want to be able to speak to it. So I learned from the matrix sheet. If I can't get it from there, and then if there's things about the neighborhood, I even do CMAs sometimes on the house that I'm that I'm showing, so I can learn about the comps, that I can learn about the neighborhood and see, you know what, like houses don't come on the market much in this neighborhood, or houses sell on an average in 3 days. So if you like this house, you might want to move. So it's really just learning as much as you can, because bottom line is you are there to get leads, but it's a total bonus if you sell that house while you're there.
Sure.
So that's the big thing, is don't walk in like, I'm here, I got my paper here, and I'm going to write down names. No, it is way more important than that. And I think that was my biggest mistake. That was honestly my biggest mistake, was being an agent who was like, oh, it's not my listing. I'll get there at quarter of. I'm going to walk in, going to sit my flyers down and turn on my music, and I got it. And it was just took a couple times me feeling, stupid, feeling like
exactly.
I didn't know. Right. That I wasn't prepared. And I was like, oh no, I am not a fly by the seat of my pants person, and I want to be prepared, and I want to represent myself the best. So that was my biggest tip, and it was my biggest learning.
Yeah. Well, I always like to kind of end with some general topics and conversation, but is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to mention in the open house that they need to know about, or a tip or a question, or anything that I missed? Questions?
The big thing is like, as we always want people to be safe. And, I'm not going to, say too much, but if you have gut instincts, use them. We have systems in place, but that's the one thing that I always have a backup person. Someone always knows where I am. And if you feel unsafe, you step out of that house. Don't stay in the house with that person that makes you feel uncomfortable, because it's not worth, you making that mistake. I think that's one of the things. But the other, and if it's a house that you're 20 some miles out, it's okay to have a buddy agent there with you too. Like anytime that you can do an open house with an agent, and you kind of lean on each other and learn from each other, that's also a wonderful opportunity. And it does. It makes it, it makes it a little bit more energized as well for the house.
Well, and if you have a lot of people, sometimes it's like herding cats too. So sometimes it's just from a management of people too.
Right, because that is one of the most frustrating things. Where, like we talked about at the beginning of the call, is that you go an hour and don't see anybody, and then all of a sudden everybody's here all at once, and you're trying to manage them and make sure you get everybody's contact information. So that's when you divide and conquer. Like that is absolutely the best way to handle it. I think the other thing is being consistent, like being consistent and knowing that open house leads take time. And honestly, the open house people that have bought with me are my greatest referral partners, because I think the connection that you make is so different than someone from your sphere of influence. I'll quickly tell them my very first success story, and I'm on my 5th transaction from those people. There were people that showed, so there were people that showed up at it was my 2nd open house. The first one I did with you, and this was the 2nd one I did. And these people walked in the house. They had flown from California. They had picked 5 cities on the East Coast where they were visiting, and they were deciding they were going to move their family to the East Coast. I connected with them that day, and I sent them the source book, and I stayed in contact with them, and we talked all the time. I had them on a portal, and they moved here, and it's 4 years now. There was 3 years. 3 years.
You're
Is it okay?
Sorry, go ahead. It was for some reason it cut out. So go ahead. Yeah.
And they have sent me multiple referrals. I get invited to all their children's birthday parties. Like, I see
That's
them
awesome.
once a quarter. Yeah, and it was all from nurturing an open house lead. And, you know, when someone walks in like that, did I think there was a chance that they were going to buy a house? These people from California who flew in that morning were flying out later that day. No, but I
No.
stayed on top of it. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's the other thing is, like, stick to it. You have to stick to it and know that open house leads can come to fruition and they can be some of your best referral partners.
So let's just say hypothetically an agent's been doing open houses for a few months and they haven't been consistent with follow-up. Do they start over? Do they go back to those old leads and try to work to rekindle them? What's your advice to someone that maybe is not great at follow-up in the past?
So if you've dropped the ball, because we've all been there,
They all have
if
done
you
it.
have, you figure out how you can reach out to them. You figure out a reason to reach out to them. Hey, the market's shifting. I've been really busy with my business. You figure out a really good script to reach out to them and see if they're still in the search and how to get in front of them. I don't think that you should ever just throw the slip away until you've given it a fair opportunity to get back in front of them. Because for all you know, they haven't done anything since that last open house.
Right, exactly.
No, don't
It's
throw
so
them
good.
away.
All right. I have the last couple things that I had, and then we'll open up to a couple questions if somebody had any. So if anybody's got questions, jot those down. What do you think, just in general, real estate, what do you think has been the most challenging part for you? Because we know you're kind of the ease for it is your connection. You talked about that at the top of the call and your retail experience. But this is not an easy business. So what hit you in the gut? What's made you, so sometimes we question, is this the right field for us to want to, quote, get a real job again? What was that? What is that? And how are you working to overcome that for you and your business?
Okay, so one of my greatest, and Drew already knows this is no surprise, is the work-life balance.
Yeah.
I have always been an all-in person. So if it's a job, I'm all in. If it's a friendship, I'm all in. So one of the things that this job often requires is that all in, and sometimes you have to divide. Like, sometimes that you're putting so much into the business that your family life suffers. So it's getting much better, but those first 2 years, it was brutal on me. I mean,
Yeah.
I would go into Drew's office crying all the time because my husband was so just miffed with how much I was working and didn't understand it. And the part that was the true struggle for me is I was used to working this hard from retail. It wasn't hard for me to jump back in and work 14, 16-hour days because I used to do that all the time and not even blink about it. So the obstacle that with my husband was, for several years, I had a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job, and he had gotten used to having that new balanced life. And here I am going what he felt was backwards, and was like, you're gone all the time. You're not fixing dinner. We don't know when we're going to see each other. We don't do that. So now, like, we make time for each other. I let him know every aspect of my business now. So he knows that if I'm showing a house at 6:30, that what's going on. And it is definitely, I've had to communicate way more with him because I was taking him for granted. I was like, oh, he's okay. He's glad I'm selling a house, or he's okay. I'm glad, but he didn't know what I was doing. So that was one of the things that I had to fix. I had to make sure he understood and knew what I was doing at all times. And it definitely has helped immensely. I have a dry erase board for my personal aspects. So, like, he knows what's going on. And then I put everything on a Google Calendar. So, for example, if he's traveling, it's on my Google Calendar, just like my stuff is, so that we don't miss each other and we stay dialed in. I mean, it is still a tremendous struggle because one of the things that my sister has said to me, and she repeats it over and over, is so many times when you start working with people, they want a piece of you. Like, they want to know that they have 24/7 contact with you. And I am still not greatest with boundaries dependent upon the client. So if I get a client that, you know, and I don't treat, and that's one thing, is like, if I have a client who is very needy, I let them be. If I have a client who's a type A, I run with it and know that I just have to answer them then, and then we're good. So that's the other thing, is being able to understand your client. I've gotten much better at that you cater your business style to that individual, because it isn't a one size fits all in this business. You have to adapt. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like really being able to be on the ground and switch in the moment. So, but it really, I think that's still the biggest thing. And I will continue to work on it. That is always going to be.
I think it will always evolve.
Yes.
So my last question before I open it up is, you know, we coach a lot of different agents, and there seems to be like an interesting, I don't know, point where they're about 3, 4, 5, 6 months into the business. Obviously, they had an expectation of what the business was, they have various backgrounds with industries before, but it tends to be that stress. It's that moment in their life or their business where it becomes. So if you were to go back in time and look at your first 3 months in real estate, would you do something different? Would you give your younger self advice that says, you know, you're 3 months in XYZ, like what do you think you would say or do to your younger self, and then how it relates to these agents?
Okay. So if you have a sphere, this is one thing I would do if I had it to do over at the beginning. I had a sphere and I didn't tap into it. And
interesting.
Not to the nth degree. I did the letter like you and I, you know, you and Coach
like
me.
we do. Yeah.
Right. But did I go after all those people that I sent those letters to? I did not. And I think that was one of the things that I regretted the most, is not really putting myself out there and getting in front of my sphere more. I definitely think that
what you shared, right? Because you just felt like you didn't want to be pushy car salesman, you didn't want to bother them, and that's what you're saying. 3 months in, you would have kind of overcome that mindset quicker if you knew what you knew.
Right. Because and I probably learned, you know, 6 months after my first several transactions were all from my sphere, and I kept kicking myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I could have probably tripled this if I hadn't been afraid to reach out to my sphere after I sent.
I remember those moments when we coached, and just like we would look at those lead sources. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's awesome because you fail forward in this business. I think it just shows that you have, you know, just you're always growing. You're always, you know, I don't think you want to live in the shoulda, woulda, coulda world, but I think it is good to reflect back and say, you know, what you did differently. So.
Right. And I mean, and you really do learn who wants to help you in your business. And there are plenty of people that are excited for you and want to be part of it. And I didn't capitalize on that at the beginning.
Yeah. And we talked about this recently, and we'll open it up, is sometimes the people in your sphere, your friends and family that you thought would help you or refer business they don't. And then the people that are in your sphere family that you would never thought they referred you, they actually do. So again, similar to the open house of you saying you service all leads equally, your sphere, you really don't know. Your Uncle Susie that loves you may not ever give you a referral, but Uncle Joe that never talks to you actually gives you a referral. So I think it shows equality in your sphere, just like open houses, right? So
yes, absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I opened up. Anybody wants to jump in for a couple questions, just say your name because we probably don't know what the voice is. And if not, then we'll kind of work it off. But what questions do you guys have? Anything? Maybe not. Maybe not. There's a good amount of people on here. But all right. If there's no questions, then I think we're good. Well, I know you're a busy lady. Thank you so much for being so honest and sharing some open houses. I know you shadow and you have people shadow you, so I think that's also great. So.
Hello.
Oh, hey, go ahead.
Well, I have one question which probably be beneficial to a lot of people. Amy, how long did it take you before you had your first transaction? And it's Italia.
Hi. I had my first transaction within 90 days. And it was because I was in coaching with Drew and I was following the systems. I really think that's had so much to do with it.
Okay. So for everybody that has that frustration, it's at least 3 to 4 months.
No,
If
there's
you follow
people.
the system.
So the one thing is when I started in coaching, it is very, very different now. And you guys actually have more information quicker.
Hold on, you're cutting out. They didn't hear this part.
Can you hear me?
Say that again.
I doubt you might need to mute. She might need to mute because it might be. Are we good?
I'm
Can
gonna
you
mute.
understand me?
Yeah, go for it. Hold on. I muted the wrong person. Sorry, go ahead. Say one more time.
So when I started in coaching, it was very, very different than it is right now. It was very introductory. We were pretty much the guinea pigs. And so,
I'm sorry
so
for
90
that.
days.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's not a problem. But 90 days seemed fast back then. Well, now you guys have access to so many systems and so much information. Your trajectory is much faster. I think if I had been in like a coaching class recently, that I probably would have had one in my first 30 days. Like, because I was given the tools and just ran with it. I was like, I did everything that Drew asked of me, and I followed the systems, and I just was like, okay, it's here and it's going to work, and I made it work. So it really is what you take from the teachings and utilize them. I am a very much to the letter. I am, like if I'm not compliant with dot loop and green sheet, I don't know what to do. It's not in my nature. So that's the other thing is, like, I took every single class. I came to the office. I entrenched myself in it, and I dove in. It was not a side hustle. This was my career, and I threw everything at it to have that first transaction. And
So
it gave me
if
the
you have
momentum.
somebody like that that's doing all the classes, doing everything they need to do, and they're still not breaking through that 90 days, is there something you think they should do differently? Because I think Adalia was leading, we had a discussion last week, was, a lot of them are doing the activities, they're doing a ton of open houses, and they're not seeing that light at the end of the tunnel yet, so they're not seeing that 90-day success window. Is there advice you would give to them, just because they do have these resources and you got in production in 90 days, but maybe something that they're missing or that they could implement?
So I guess the one thing is to find out if they're truly getting in front of people after the initial contact. Is it something that once you make the initial contact, you never have contact with the people again? So is it something that you're not making the connections organic where these people feel as though they want to work with you? Are you not coming off as an expert enough? I think it is a little bit of self-evaluation. Like,
yeah, it's both of those. Yeah.
Right, because that's the thing is like, if you come across the phone as a telemarketer, people aren't going to want to deal with you. If you come across as someone's confident and they're pleasant and they want to talk to you and you're not robotic, you will make a connection that much easier. So unfortunately, a lot of it is self-evaluation and see if it's the communication piece, is it the consistency piece? Why? Because the business is out there. We know the business is out there. So what is the shortcoming of why you're falling short? And, is your such a huge departure from what you did before that you need to do a little bit more to get yourself in a real estate mindset? I mean, because that's the other thing is a lot of people change these massive careers and it's such a huge departure from what they did before that they're not used to the nature of this business.
Yeah.
So some soul coaching.
Well, and also not to beat yourself up. I mean, I think it is skill based. It
Oh,
is
absolutely.
mindset. But nobody's perfect in life. So I think that's by coaching you. I think you did follow a lot of the systems and models, and you did do a lot of the training. But you found your lane and you found your authenticity. I thought that was is a cool thing that I see in your business today, and that helps you grow. And I also, you know that you're not perfect, so you fail at something and then you analyze it and say, can I make this better? And the topic of open houses, I think that's one of the things. That's why I wanted you to, is you're great at looking at open houses and constantly tweaking and modifying and adjusting. And you do an open house today is so different than you probably did 4 years ago. So I think it just shows you
Oh, yeah.
evolve with the times and
Well,
with the business.
And the other thing, then, this is a huge bit of advice. When we start out, we always find our tribe at the office. Like, I have my tribe still. And the one thing that you have to do is never compare yourself to anybody else. It is your business. So if someone else that you've been working alongside gets a deal before you do, don't think it's because you did something wrong. Don't think that. It's just that the opportunity came to them quicker than it did to you, and that's just the law of averages. It's not that you've done anything wrong, because that is, to this day, that is still one of the hardest things in this business, because it's such a competitive business. And when you are working alongside somebody and you're like, what am I doing? And Drew knows, I mean, I had those conversations. Yeah. What am I doing wrong? You have to think,
your tribe, a lot of them, came out of the gate at a different pace, and we talked about it. It's not how you come out of the gate, it's how you continue the journey. And so, but I think that is
stay
hard.
In your lane.
Yeah, stay in your lane, be authentic to yourself. And if you don't know what that is, work really hard to find it. Find your own lane, find your own authenticity. So, well, thank you for your time. I know you have deals to ratify and deals to negotiate. Appreciate your time and everybody on the call, and I'll pop this up on our Facebook page, so if anybody did not listen to it or wants to review, you'll have the recording. So have an awesome day, everybody. Thanks, Amy, so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.